Honourable for St. James North.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this resolution laid in this Parliament by the Honourable Member for St. John, Minister of Sports, and to speak on a few aspects of the policy. It is a very all-embracing policy, sir, and it's a green paper, obviously, therefore, sir, is in draft. It isn't in final form, and we look forward to debating the white paper later on. And I am happy to have this opportunity, sir, to speak on sports, because to my recollection, it is the first time we've had a full debate on sports in this Parliament in my almost 10.5 years in this House. I know that the last administration, the LP administration, spoke about having a draft national sports policy. I don't believe it was ever even approved by Cabinet, but it certainly never reached this Parliament for debate. So therefore I commend the Honourable Minister for Sports and his predecessor, the Honourable Member for St. George South, who would have had an input originally in this green paper. The issue, sir, of the correlation between sports and healthy living and well-being is so important to us as Barbadians of who we are at present. We all know the tremendous health challenges that many of our people, too large a percentage of our people, suffer on a daily basis in terms of non-communicable diseases, the diabetes, the hypertension, the challenges with heart problems, cardiovascular diseases, and sports and activity, physical activity, is accepted by all the experts as a means whereby the prevalence of these non-communicable diseases can be alleviated to a large extent. And therefore we have to encourage our people in a Barbados where, as the statistics showed, I think a few months ago, that as many as 31% of our young children are obese. We have to encourage more sports development and participation in sports by all of our people. The paper speaks towards greater participation of sports at the community level, sir. And this is, again, all important because this is where a lot of our problems, our social challenges in this country lies, as has been said by contributors to this debate earlier, including the Honourable Member for the City, who has certainly part responsibility for the development of community programs which will lead towards crime prevention or lowering of crime in this country. And I think it is beyond argument or contention, sir, that development of sports in our communities and wholesome activities, recreational activities, will lead to lesser crime in this country. Because if you're involved in activities of sports, sir, and wholesome activities which are meaningful and which are enjoyable and which are physical, develop your body, your character, your whole well-being, your ability to teamwork, which disciplines you, sir, because sports too, yes, is about discipline and complying with the training programs and turning up on time, as we heard earlier. You're going to be less likely to be about the place shooting gun and dealing in illegal activities and using illegal drugs, sir, because illegal drug use and abuse only gonna lessen your ability to be a top sportsman or an excellent sportsman, sir. So this is another reason why we have to promote sports development in this country, the cohesion it brings to all of our communities. All of us have communities in Barbados, all across Barbados, which are close-knit. Some of the members of parliament here have housing areas. The majority of constituencies have housing areas, so I don't have that, but I have closely knit communities, sir, in which sports development is important and has to be encouraged by those in policy making or legislative authoritative positions. The issue, sir, another pleasing aspect of this policy is its principal stance to create gender equality in terms of sports in this country, sir. And that was alluded to by the Honourable Member for St. Peter earlier. And that's very important, sir, because, I mean, there can't be any discrimination against women, against females in this country. And I commend the Honourable Minister for Sports, and I'm assuming it was a Cabinet decision, sir. I commend Cabinet for allowing tax concessions for the female cricketers of Barbados on the equipment and the other paraphernalia, sir, a few months ago. In fact, I must confess, sir, I was surprised that we were in that position where, of course, the male national cricketers would be exempt from tax concessions, would be exempt from paying taxes, would be eligible for tax concessions on the equipment and paraphernalia related to their sports, but not the females. And because it was a long time ago, under the administration of the late Right Honourable Owen Arthur, member for St. Peter, that sportsmen got concessions for tax concessions on the equipment, etc. And so I really and truly assumed that the females had it too. Lo and behold, that wasn't so, and therefore that was an implementation of some aspect of this policy even before, of course, it was brought to this Parliament, but obviously after it had been approved by the Cabinet last year. The importance of education and sports cannot be emphasized enough, that correlation. And we all know that the Honourable Member for St. Philip West is in the process of dealing with educational reform, long overdue educational reform, sir. And the statistics show that traditionally a lot of persons who were excellent sports persons in this country, top athletes, cricketers, footballers, were also very good academically. So that's a fact. And a healthy mind and a healthy body, sir. And therefore, we look forward to seeing an educational reform in this country where there is greater emphasis on drawing closer association and relationships between development of sports within the educational system, within the schools. So it happens obviously in terms of physical education and you know, schools, of course, having playing fields and tennis courts and other facilities for sports and activities, but we have to get this at more strategic levels, sir. because it is part of the excellence and the character of the young person that we are seeking to create in Barbados. This Barbadian young person who can go out into the world, any part of the world, and excel globally. And I imagine, sir, that after the education reform is concluded, that there will be specialist schools for sports, academies of excellence, which will specialize in sports and sports development as well, sir. Very important, sir, of course, as mentioned by the Honourable Member for St. Peter, is the policy statement in principle to include persons with disabilities at all levels in sports. And this is, I can't say it better than the Honourable Member said it today, so this is a matter of right, sir. This isn't something now that this Parliament or this country or administration will be given to persons with disabilities. This is their right as citizens of this country, sir. And I'm aware that a member from the other place, Senator Andrely Boyce, would have had a few meetings with representatives of the Honourable Minister's committee to fine-tune the disability sports aspect of this paper, sir. Because at the time, of course, we were going through a national policy on disabilities, which I believe should be before Cabinet at the present time. And within that policy document, of course, is a specific mention of the creation of wider participation of persons with disabilities, including, of course, children with disabilities, in sports and recreational activities, and in the whole cultural and indeed every aspect of Barbados. And therefore, sir, we have to ensure, because it is all right to put this in words, sir, but implementing it and making it a reality is key. Therefore, we have to ensure accessibility of persons with disabilities to all sports facilities in this country. I know that when the committee, of which I had the honor to chair, the committee to establish the commission to improve the lives of persons with disabilities, met with the Honourable Minister and his team in sports, his ministry and the National Sports Council, we were told that the older pavilions in this country and sports facilities, those that would have been built in the 1970s, for instance, or 80s, are not accessible in every way to persons with disabilities, to persons, for example, with immobilities, but that the newer facilities are. And so I suppose that's understandable. The Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities would have been formulated in 2006. Barbados signed on to it in 2007, sir. So in the 1970s and 80s, sir, as we know, people with disabilities, even globally, were not being treated or recognized by mainstream society as people who should be given full rights to participate in every aspect of life like anybody else. The first set of disabilities legislation would have come into force essentially in the early 1990s globally. We still don't have such legislation, sir. Hopefully this Parliament can debate it. As I've said before the end of the year, there's a draft Rights of Persons with Disabilities bill, sir, which again should be before Cabinet for consideration. Within that bill, in addition to accessibility, we are speaking of training improvement for persons with disabilities, improved training opportunities for persons with disabilities in sports, and of course that is key, sir, because you have to create that environment. You have to give the financial and technical resources for persons with disabilities, including young persons with disabilities, to be trained, to be able to fulfill their potential, sir, in this area and in their development. We also speak, sir, towards recognition, appropriate recognition for those persons with disabilities who excel in their areas of sports. And this is key. Not only recognition, to be truthful, for persons with disabilities who excel, but for persons who excel in sports, period, sir. But especially for persons with disabilities, sir. Because this would increase their self-esteem, their confidence in themselves, their ability to believe that they can scale the world and achieve anything as best to their ability and their potential and talent, just like everybody else. And key to this, sir, as well, and within the draft bill is implementation of sports and physical fitness programs for persons with disabilities. This is going to, obviously, as was said earlier, take some financial resources, sir, but it is the right thing to do. So if we have to spend money making those facilities that were built in the 1970s and 80s accessible to persons with disabilities, sir, is something that we have to do, sir, within the draft policy document. I believe we have that as a long-term plan. We know that that can't be done overnight, sir, within the first year of the implementation or the approval of the policy, because we know the times, sir, and the financial resources of government has to be spread around so that everybody could get a little piece. But the issue here is that development of sports for everyone, including persons with disabilities, is something that will be money well spent, sir, because such will give persons the opportunity who otherwise may not have had the opportunity to get national development scholarships. For instance, we know that some of our athletes do get scholarships on leaving school to go to the northern countries where sports development is at a higher level than ours, sir. And some of these persons use the opportunity, obviously, to get academic training and qualifications, sir. In fact, a former Barbados national athlete, young, career athlete, was in my house yesterday, a friend of my daughter's, sir. First time I met her. She got a scholarship to United States, was trained, works out there, seems to be doing very well, very good job, sir, through a scholarship. Indeed, sir, she went to your alma mater. So otherwise, I'm sure she would not have been able to go overseas to university in the United States. So this is the kind of opportunity that we have to give to our constituents, sir, particularly those who are from lower economic backgrounds, who otherwise would not have been able to go overseas and study and develop their potential, both as sports persons and as intelligent persons, academics, to be able to get university degrees in the northern part of the world. And we owe them that, sir. So that's why this sports policy as well, what we are doing today and debating today, this resolution is so important. The professional opportunity, as I said, sir, is clear. The employment opportunity, too, of those in sports within Barbados now speaks for itself, sir. We know the amount of people, and I believe the Honourable Member for St. George South would have spoken on it today. the amount of persons, for example, who are involved in horse racing, the horse racing industry, the employment of persons in the horse racing industry, especially those who live around the garrison in St. Michael South and South Central, sir, is key, sir. I'm aware of that, sir, because one time I was being encouraged to buy shares in a horse, sir. I used to go to horse racing then, sir, enjoy myself sometimes, and came to understand more the sociology of horse racing as it pertained to the average Barbadian, sir, especially, as I said, those who live near the garrison. Sports tourism, sir, as I said, money put into sports development in this country at community level will endure for the benefit of this country, because sports tourism has to be a key, sir, as we seek to enhance areas of our tourism product and indeed our whole economic development in this country. We have to create a greater environment for sports tourism. Of course, sir, the 2.5 odd years of COVID in the early part of this decade set us back tremendously in terms of our sports. We know that sports participation was banned for significant part of the COVID trauma, sir, to try to prevent the spread of COVID. But we all remember the time, especially like now, summer coming up, sir, we used to have some extensive hockey tournaments, for example, at the Wildy Complex. Sports teams coming in from other CARICOM countries and further afield and playing. And of course, we know of teams, we've had historically teams from basketball teams, I believe, from United States coming down here and training during their winter, and cricket teams, for instance, because we have comparatively fine weather throughout the year. Don't mind, of course, we are about to embark on another hurricane season. So sports tourism has to be promoted. I could say, sir, I'm still a sportsman because I still try to play lawn tennis twice a week and occasionally go and run about the field at University of the West Indies, sir. But I've been playing lawn tennis for over a half century. Was once a junior champion of Barbados. So I know, sir, of persons who bring teams from Canada, sir. I haven't asked your permission, sir, to call his name, but I'm speaking in a positive light. Former national lawn tennis player Lionel Lely, every year, he tries to bring, again, obviously COVID, there was no such tours, but again, resumed this year, bringing Canadians down to Barbados for a couple of weeks and playing at Paragon Tennis Club. And these are authentic tourists, sir, spending money, because they have to live in hotels, they have to buy food, they gain transportation, sir, they're enjoying some of the life of Barbados, sir. So all of this is part of the enhancement as well of our tourist product that we have to encourage. So I noticed that lawn tennis is not among the core sports that is being mentioned in this green paper as one of the sports which will be concentrated on, sir, and perhaps the Honourable Minister and the Ministry of Sports can relook at that aspect, sir, because if you understand the history of lawn tennis in Barbados, you would understand the development of people's move from a low economic bracket and being given the opportunity to achieve, sir, because in the 1950s up to certainly the early part and even the latter part of the 1960s, lawn tennis was essentially exclusively a game played by the white population in this country and the middle to upper income black elite, sir. But in the 1970s, that started to change. And why, sir? Because young black boys who were poor, sir, from, for example, the Richmond area, Deacons area, used to go down at the harbor where they had tennis courts, sir. But you were saying Michael Mann, sir, and you older than me, sir.
Sidney Lopez was one of the
Sidney
first.
Lopez, sir,
Yes, sir.
of
Very
course.
familiar.
Sidney Lopez, Lionel Eli, David Highland, sir. Speak positively. So I am not in breach of calling those names, sir. All born in lower economic circumstances, but they were ball boys. And at the harbor, sir, where the tennis used to be, before they had, long time, of course, before you had national courts at Wildy. And all of them developed, sir, and became top tennis players, national players, playing for Barbados, sir, and went on to earn income from it, sir. As I said, I spoke about Mr. Eli's position in Canada. He's a top tennis coach out there. We know Sidney Lopez, sir, of him and what he has done for tennis development in Barbados, sir. And, my children used to go to his camp, especially my son, who played tennis for Barbados youth, indeed, sir, when he was a teenager. So I would want to urge the Honourable Minister to look at including lawn tennis as a core area because of its historical significance, if only for that, at community level and for the development and the transition of people who were born poor to develop and achieve their full talents. And indeed, we have lawn tennis courts spread across many of the schools in Barbados. So it is played at the schools, it's accessible. And therefore, I would want to encourage that. And also as an area which can increase our sports tourism with, as I said, people coming in from North America. And I'm telling you, sir, those who do come really look forward every year to coming and enjoying a couple of weeks in our country. The issue, of course, of road tennis, our only indigenous sport, as we've heard, and as we all know, sir, a game that I used to play a lot of when I was a teenager, sir. There was a tennis court at the house opposite me, sir. I would come home in the afternoon and we would play tennis. I played road tennis all about St. Michael's, sir, the Pine in Lodge Hill, sir. Fantastic sport, and that sport developed essentially, sir, because people from the lower economic group couldn't really afford, the lawn tennis rackets. So, yes, even now. So therefore, of course, road tennis is an inexpensive sport, sir, and it has to be encouraged at all levels. I know the issue has come up as to patenting it. The Honourable Member for St. Peter spoke in that regard, and I know, I believe the Honourable Member for St. Michael North is looking at that, I believe, the issue of property intellectualizing road tennis globally so that we will have rights over it as part of our culture and our development, sir. In my constituency, we have road tennis courts at Sign Hill and Roadview. A lot of road tennis is played down in Roadview. I was happy to be able to associate myself in terms of sponsorship with the tournament that was played in Roadview for our last independence. We have court in Western again, and certainly I look forward to greater development of that sport. Cricket, though, of course, is our main core group, sir. And, you know, the issue is we have to, I think, find out why it is that these days we are still excelling, both as a country and in terms of a region, West Indies, at youth level in terms of cricket. When our cricketers are 14, 15, 16, they're still doing very well in these international tournaments, but that we're struggling, you know, at the senior level, sir. And the Honourable Prime Minister, in her budget speech last year, remember speaking about trying to focus in on our core traditional areas of excellence, the Ramsar and cricket. And I would therefore expect that the Honourable Minister will put all his acumen and resources behind strategically looking at why we're falling behind at senior level in cricket, as I said, both nationally and globally within you know, the last few decades after reaching the pinnacle, sir. I mean, sir, we all know, right, excellent Sir Garfield Sobers, national hero, sir, was the most famous Barbadian globally. That is a fact. Until, again, probably the right excellent Rihanna came along. She's, I would think, the most famous Barbadian now. I go places in Africa, sir. Some people never heard of Barbados before now, sir. They know of Barbados now, largely because of the esteem in which the Honourable Prime Minister is held. But 15, 20 years ago, a lot of people never heard of Barbados, but they heard of Sir Gary Sobers, though. I remember going to Kenya, a time Nairobi. The Honourable Minister of Home Affairs was with me on that trip, and the Honourable Attorney General. The three of us were there at a Commonwealth Law Conference, and going in a restaurant in Nairobi and seeing Sir Gary's picture up. And I felt good, sir, real good as a Barbadian. So cricket is what, to a large extent, Barbados was identified with, sir. Excellence of the Barbadian being, sir. And we have to do all that is possible as a government, as a political directorate, to try and assist that.
Your Honourable Member has 2 more minutes.
Thank you, sir. I couldn't, 2 quick points, sir. I have to, before I sit down, sir, plead for mini stadia in my constituency, sir. The reality of St. James North, even though, sir, you know, you say it on the Gold Coast and all of that, sir, the fact is that there is no playground facility, no sports facility on the coast, sir. There's no sports facility between Trent, which is on the outskirts of the constituency, in St. James Central, and Speightstown, sir, which has a lovely playing field, sir. None. It's a challenge, I know, sir. There has been agreement in principle to put mini stadia whereby you can play some basketball, netball, sir, volleyball by Western, sir. And I want to urge the Honourable Minister to see that through. The Honourable Member went with me last year to that area, and it will be part of the development of Western, because the fact is that you need sports facilities, and in a highly populated area, right through the coast of St. James North, there's no such facility, sir. And then the issue of protection of employees from unfair dismissal, where they are seeking to develop their sporting talents, sir. We know that under the Employment Rights Act, I think it is Section 30, a dismissal would be unfair where the employer dismisses the employee for his participation in sports where it is part of his national duties, performing at national or international duty or regional duty, sir. So that's covered, but it is not covered where, let's say, an employee asks for time to go and play, or even to train, sir, to play in local sports, sir. And it is up to the goodwill and the moral suasion of the employee, but it's not a legal right in that case. And I would want to urge employers, corporate Barbados, to cooperate, sir, because ultimately it's for the good of their company, sir, to say that they have employees who are representing at higher level or who are being given the opportunity to represent at higher level. But it also creates for a more wholesome employee when that happens. Indeed, sir, there needs to be greater involvement of corporate Barbados in the development of sports, sir, because it is for the good of the country. And on my last point, sir, again, I would want to agree with some of the earlier contributors to this debate, sir, that, including the Honourable Minister who presented, that we can only urge the national federations, the national sports organizations, to, some of them, sir, not all, some of them, to get their acts together, sir. It can't be about egotism or personal fiefdoms, sir. It has to be about the development of our people in a key aspect of their being and their character. And some organizations, clearly they don't have proper governance structure, sir, corporate structure, how they're run, and therefore they have issues, and it ultimately affects the progress, the development of that particular sport, and that can't be good. And therefore I join with the other members in urging those particular associations or the officials or directorates of those associations that have these problems and issues to think at a higher level. It isn't about you, the individuals. It can never be about the individual persons. It has to be about the organization and the development of the sports, ultimately for the benefit of the development economically and socially and in terms of health of the Barbadian person. I'm obliged to you, sir.